My name is Tim Kramer. I am the MEP guy here at Microsoft Resources, and what I'm going to do is basically go through the AutoCAD MEP 2016 software first. I'll switch over to AutoCAD MEP and show you a few things in 2016, switch back to the slides for Revit, go through those slides, and then switch back into the software that way. Hopefully it doesn't hopefully I don't have any problems doing that, but, I can tell you based on the AutoCAD 2016 What's New webinar I did a few weeks ago that it can run long. So hopefully I can keep it all under focus. So what you're seeing here on this first slide is basically a breakdown of the enhancements that are specific to AutoCAD MEP, or at least available to you in AutoCAD MEP. The section enhancements, the revision cloud enhancements, properties, enhancements, and the UI Finder, ironically, are all really AutoCAD architecture as well as AutoCAD MEP enhancements. They're not specific to MEP, so if you know anything about AutoCAD MEP, you know that it's built on top of AutoCAD architecture, which is built on top of AutoCAD. So if you attended the AutoCAD 2016 What's New webinar, you probably saw some things there in that webinar or demo that translates into AutoCAD MEP as well. And if you attended Reed Addis, his webinar last week on AutoCAD architecture, what you saw in his webinar, some of those enhancements also transfer over into MEP. So having said that, if you look at the bullets here, the list of MEP specific is limited to one: elbow duct fitting enhancement. I am sorry to say that basically AutoCAD MEP as a product is what we refer to as on maintenance. So if you've been using AutoCAD MEP for some time, you probably know by now that basically Autodesk is not investing a whole lot of time and effort into improving the software or adding bells and whistles that weren't in previous releases. They're really focusing more on the Revit side of things, unfortunately, for those who are AutoCAD MEP gurus, but it's still here. It's not going away. We just do not have as many things to talk about when it comes to the AutoCAD MEP software. So having said that, we do have some section enhancements which will be beneficial to the AutoCAD MEP users. In prior releases, you would create a section, and then when that section needed to be updated, or if you modified the section, the cut line, or any of the objects that were in the section, you had to turn around and regenerate the section manually after the fact. Now it's more or less automatic, so that's a nice little improvement. The revision cloud enhancements, I mean, that may seem like a very small thing. I mean, again, it was mentioned in the AutoCAD What's New webinar, but basically, I mean, revision clouds can be, kind of a time-consuming thing when you start placing revision clouds and then have changes. You need to modify the cloud. In the past, you had to delete the old cloud and then recreate it. That is not necessary now. You do have the ability to edit the existing cloud and as well as these additional types. And I will try to show you some of this when we get into the software itself. As far as the style browser enhancements, again, this is an AutoCAD architecture and MEP benefit. You do have the ability to be a little bit more efficient when you're trying to bring different object types or styles into a drawing. So you don't have to go into the Style Manager any longer to do that. There is a palette, a floating palette that basically you can activate and have readily available at your fingertips to make that to bring in different styles a lot more faster and more efficiently than we could in previous releases. So I will show you a little bit of that as well. The property visibility override is something that you'll find in the options bar, or I'm sorry, in the options menu. Basically now you have the ability to kind of override what you saw in the Style Manager so that the changes that could be made inside of the Style Manager can basically be locked down, as well as being displayed better inside of the extended data within the properties palette of AutoCAD MEP. So we will take a look at that as well. The status bar enhancements, this is an AutoCAD, the vanilla AutoCAD enhancement, but it does obviously impact AutoCAD MEP. I think it's pretty nice because now we don't have to worry about not being able to see certain things along the taskbar or the status bar. There's a lot of things that you can turn on and off. Maybe it's too much. Maybe too much information can be a bad thing at times, but you do have the ability to control what you see. And if you change resolution or you have a smaller screen, that will automatically wrap, so you don't lose anything because it's off the screen for whatever reason. The next thing is the UI Finder. One of the things that I find when I do tech support is that more and more AutoCAD or AutoCAD MEP users are really afraid. They just do not like change, and they're really afraid to make the leap to the next version because they've configured their current setup a certain way and they like the way things are. They don't like change. And, when the Microsoft ribbon functionality was added into these Autodesk products, many moons ago now, a lot of people started screaming, "Where's my toolbars? How do I get my toolbars back?" And they just really were not a fan of the ribbon interface. But I can tell you that once you adopt that ribbon interface, you'll find that it is more efficient. It's a better way to work. But as you move from one version to the next, obviously, you do want to make sure that you don't lose productivity. So what they've done is they've given you this interactive help file now, so that if you are looking for a particular tool, you don't know where the tool is, you can click on it in the help file, and assuming that everything is set up properly on your particular system, and I'll explain that later, you will see this little arrow that will pop up and show you where that tool is inside of the ribbon. So again, it's to help people migrate forward, not get left behind. I was just talking to somebody, a client yesterday, whose user is using 2008, and they are about ready to install 2016 on that user system, and this person is scared to death. And of course, this type of help interface will definitely help that person be able to migrate forward a little easier. And so then now here we are with that one MEP specific improvement or enhancement that I was mentioning. And as you can see on the duct layout preferences dialog box, you now have the ability to choose the layout options, so that when you're creating duct and an elbow is placed based on your layout preferences settings, as you see here, it will automatically use a reducing elbow, if you want to force it, or only if needed, or you can also use a straight elbow and a reducer combined. So that is the one thing that they gave us. And if I click through, yes, there is my last slide or my next slide for MEP. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to AutoCAD MEP itself. So I told you that I was going to talk about or show you section enhancements. I'm going to go ahead and flip over to, let me go ahead and do it this way. I'm going to go ahead and flip into a floor plan view. And if I wanted to create a section, you'll notice on the Home tab, we have this vertical section button. I'll go ahead and create a vertical section. Perhaps I'll start about here, come over to some point, make a little jog section, as you can see there. Once I go ahead and hit enter, it's going to ask me, where do I want to, what's the extent of this section. I'll go ahead and just pick a point here so that it is creating the section for me as far as that distance. And as far as being able to line it up now, you can actually snap to the end point of that section line and move this guy basically to a place that is not going to be on the other side of a sheet. So here we have our section that was created very quickly. And if I want to, make some changes, maybe I've added some piping or I've made some changes, or I just want to change the way this section is cut, I can come in here, I can modify where the section is cut, go back up to the section itself and click on regenerate, and it will automatically recreate that section based on this new information. I didn't see a whole lot of things changing, so let me give you something a little bit more, oops, now I've got two different pieces here. Let's just do this and do this. We'll go ahead and modify that real quick, and then come up here and select the section for you and regenerate. And now it's not working the way I expected it to. That's always good for a webinar, right? So let's just go ahead and jump on to the next piece, the Revision Cloud enhancements. There is a Revision Cloud tool under the annotation, and if I click on Revision and go ahead and create a revision, if you're watching the command line, you're going to notice that basically I have a lot of options right here. I'm going to go ahead and close that. So if I needed to come back and make a change later on, again, you know, as far as the revision itself is concerned, we have the ability to make changes to what you see on the screen based on, you know, these little glyphs that you see here. We can start modifying this. We can control it in many different ways. But if I go ahead and start grabbing some of those, we will see that the section, or I'm sorry, the Revision Cloud will give me the ability to create some, you know, to modify. So let me go back into my revision. And it's not going to cooperate with me now. Well, this worked earlier, and now I am basically lost in my drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that one as well. Look at that. So let me come over here to the Home tab and click on Tools. Let's talk about the Style Browser for a second. So here is that Style Browser that I was mentioning. This is a floating palette. You can have this floating or docked if you want to, on the side if you like. You can come in here and choose the different object types. You know, right now we're looking at all the different pipes. I can also look at the duct, of course, and if I wanted to add a particular style into my my existing drawing, I can click on it in the browser, then choose the little plus sign if I wanted to add it that way, or I could also right-click and add the object that way. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to start the duct add tool. And if I come over here and look at properties, you can see that the system, the makeup air system is current. So if I start placing a duct, and of course it doesn't want to give me the a fitting very nicely, so we'll just go ahead and accept that. And I can come back and also do multiple. So if you wanted, you could select multiple with the control key down, right click. You can add these into the, well, let's try this. Let's do the outdoor air, add the objects, importing the styles. That is not going to work for me either. Interesting. So I'm batting 1,000 here today, but let me go back to the properties. I'm going to go ahead and select one of the existing duct systems, and I click on the properties. You'll notice that, again, not the labels, should have turned the labels off first, but you can see here that this is a makeup air system, and if I wanted to, I could take an existing system and basically apply different properties to it by using the apply style to section, and then when I go back over to my properties, it is applying a different system that way. Again, there's a number of enhancements here that will, you know, basically streamline the entire process. You can also pull from, you know, the content library or a project standard drawing if you had one already created, or if you had another drawing you wanted to pull from, you could also pull in that data from that file as well. And then you can also look at the various different drawing files this way. The project visibility override, that variable that I mentioned earlier, this is something that you can actually type in. It's AEC PSD visibility. Let's see if I can get it. There we go. The autofill feature is a very nice tool. And if you notice down here on the command line that the default is 0, if I was to set it to 1, then it's going to change the settings to visibility, or I'm sorry, the extended information. Let me grab a duct here. When I look at the properties and go into the extended data, what you see in the properties is going to change. Let me go ahead and bring up the options, and we'll see that here where that setting is. So if I go into right here under property override, we have the none setting. We also have the visibility and visibility in order. So you currently, the default, as I was saying, with the property override is none. So when you see that in the properties, you're not going to see that in the properties when it's set to none. But if you switch to visibility, then they're going to be listed in the extended data. If you switch to visibility in order, then it's going to be listed in the extended data in order. And if by setting either one of these, what ends up happening, excuse me, when you go to the style manager, is you end up locking out the property set definitions that would be shown in this list here. So any of these, let me see, duct objects has a little bit more to look at, but what you're seeing right here as far as the definition, this visible column here is all locked out because of that setting. And if I were to go back into my options and set this to none, go back into my style manager, bring that up again. Property set definitions, look at my duct objects. Now you can see that you do have the ability to control those. So this is really just a CAD standard type thing that, you might want to be able to lock these types of things down. So it's a nice feature, so something maybe to consider utilizing. So let's go ahead and get that style browser out of the way. The status bar enhancements that I mentioned, basically, if you click on the lower right-hand corner of your status bar, that's where you can bring up the customization. And as I said, there is a lot of information here. There's even a little scroll bar because there's so many different things that you can turn on and off. And as you start turning these things on, they start appearing along the bottom of your screen. And if it gets to, basically what it's doing here is it's using up a lot of real estate in my mind, depending on how much you have turned on. But as you start, you can lock it down so that, you can't turn things on and off accidentally. So you have that option once you've configured this the way that you want it. But basically, you can come through here and decide what you want to see, what you don't want to see, turn these things on or off, and lock it down. And as I said, if you have if you were to change resolution, this entire status bar across the bottom is going to wrap. So that'll be a nice benefit to the interface. And then as far as the UI Finder, if I go into Help, one of the examples that I was using before was the duct add tool. So maybe we don't know how to add a duct, or we don't know where that duct add tool is. I can come into the help file and click on Find, and it basically, if it's set up properly, or one thing that I did discover is that if you don't have if you don't have your graphics enabled inside of options, it may not work. But I think the WebEx is actually controlling the ability to do this feature. So it's kind of disabling it because it turns off, some of the Windows arrow functionalities. So unfortunately, it's not giving me the ability to show you this. But basically, what would end up happening is you'd get a little arrow. It would open up the menu that you wanted to see, and it would give a little arrow that would point to the command. So, again, if I do this, it's like I said, it's not gonna actually work. It should show it to me. Instead, it's giving me this error or this little flyout that says it's currently hidden behind another palette. I'm not sure. Maybe if I move that off the side and click Find, nope, still not working. I think it's the fact that I'm in a WebEx here. So, unfortunately, I can't fully show you that either. So let's go ahead and switch back into MEP here. And what I wanted to show you, under Manage, we have our duct preferences And if I click on the duct preferences, this is the functionality that I was talking about that was added that is specific for MEP. It will allow you to basically create an elbow using one of these three options automatically. So that is long overdue, in my opinion. So nice to see that added into AutoCAD MEP at this point. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my PowerPoint slide and start going through some of the Revit MEP improvements, enhancements. So when we talk about Revit MEP, what we're really talking about today is Revit. As most of you probably know, all of the different flavors of Revit, architecture, structure, and MEP have all been rolled into one Revit product for a few releases now. So when you start looking online at information related to what's new in Revit and what's the latest and greatest, don't be blind and just focus on the MEP stuff. You need to go into the entire document of enhancements and take a look at what they typically label as architectural enhancements. Unless it's like an improvement to creating stairs, it's typically a core functionality enhancement to the Revit product. So I actually modified this slide to show you the platform enhancements that were technically labeled as architecture enhancements, but really apply to all the three different products or the three different flavors of Revit. We have, a number of different bullets here that I feel are in fact valuable or of some relevance to our MEP specific users. So we'll go ahead and see a number of those here in the next few slides. So if we get started on the platform tools themselves, one of the nice things that they've done as far as making changes in the options menu is to give you a progressive display. So you have the ability to turn this on or off. It is turned on by default. And basically what this means is if you have a large model, it technically doesn't matter if it's large or small, but for those who have been working in large models for some time and they need to change a view, they've typically had to wait for the view to completely refresh and draw all the geometry before they could start, moving around or, changing what they see on the screen. That is no longer necessary. So basically, if you change your view and depending on, again, on the size of the model, the size of your processor and amount, how much RAM you have, that geometry may not be fully loaded before you're given the ability to go ahead and pan and zoom, rotate, and orbit the view. So pretty nice little enhancement to the finishing aspects of Revit. There are some improvements that have been made to rotate or, Project North. Basically, you now have the ability to, there's a new functionality when you basically rotate Project North that will allow you to apply the rotation to just the plan view, or it's basically to the plan view only, but you can apply it to other components that are in the view, such as text and filled regions, revision clouds, and so forth, detail elements that you weren't able to do previously. So I'll show you where that is once we get into the software itself. Next thing, which is across the board, is the ability to open a sheet view from within the project browser without having to sort through the sheets and figure out where does this view appear. So basically, when we go into our project browser, if we're working on a view and we want to see it, if we know that it's actually on a sheet, if the view's been dragged onto a sheet and we want to see it on the sheet itself, how it's oriented on the sheet, there's a right-click option that will list Open Sheet. If the view is not on a sheet, then Open Sheet's going to be grayed out, of course. The other thing about this is not something that you can utilize for legends or schedules, since those types of Revit objects typically can be placed on multiple different sheets. So it's really limited to just various different views that can only be placed on one sheet. And again, I'll show you that once we open up the software. There have been some revision enhancements. You can now delete multiple revisions at the same time. You can add prefixes or suffixes, and you can actually have an alphanumeric numbering configuration. So I'll open up the revisions so that we can see that as well. I think it's another nice enhancement to give you a little bit more flexibility than you had in the past when you're trying to use revisions inside of Revit. Another one, just disregard the view here. It's showing you stairs, but this is a enhancement that applies across the board. Basically, it's the selection boxes. Being able to isolate elements and create unobstructed views. If you've attended one of my Revit MEP classes, one of the coolest things and necessary things that I show my students is the ability to create multiple partial views, or multiple partial 3D views, I should say, of the various different views or plan views or section views that you happen to create inside of Revit. So, when you're working in an MEP environment and you need to focus on, say, a bathroom area, and you only want to see, the objects in that bathroom, your 3D view, the default 3D view shows the entire building, and you don't want to see that. So what we would probably end up doing is creating a partial or a call out, which is what Revit refers to a large plan. We would create that call out, and then we might use the orient to view option from within Revit's view cube to assign a 3D view to the enlarged view that we previously created. And by doing that, we've essentially created this 3D view of a small call out or a section cut or something of that sort that allows us to be able to manipulate things within that 3D view much easier than trying to do it in a full-size 3D view. All this talking is basically to let you know that now it's basically just one click. So all the effort that we used to have to put into creating these 3D views oriented to other views can be done just by selecting the elements and then choosing an icon on the ribbon to isolate those objects. Very, very nice. One of my favorite enhancements to 2016. Next thing we're going to show you here, or at least talk about, is the rendering enhancements. This is probably not something that most of my MEP users are that excited about because they don't always create renderings, the way architects might. But I know some of my lighting designers, they want to see, they have to do some renderings, see what their lights look like on the building and so forth. So this has been enhanced. And from the folks, in tech support that use this functionality, they're pretty excited about it. So maybe you will be too. The next thing regarding IFC links and rooms now use existing geometry. So if you happen to be an MEP engineer that is working with an architect that is using ArchiCAD, for example, and is having to deal with IFC files that the ArchiCAD product was able to generate, it wasn't that easy to generate rooms or spaces, at least on the MEP side. So now the IFC file format has been improved greatly, and one of the things that those improvements have done for us is to be able to allow us to use the IFC-based elements to define room boundaries as well as spaces. I probably should have edited this slide just to use the word spaces instead of rooms, because if you're an MEP user, we do not create rooms in Revit MEP, we create spaces. So nevertheless, if you have to work with IFC-based objects, there has been some improvements there. Also, a multidisciplinary enhancement has to do with energy analysis. So, most of my MEP users, they typically are using Train Trace or Carrier HAP or some other third-party software to do their energy analysis on the mechanical side. Most of these folks are, very leery about using Revit. And basically, Autodesk wants you to use Revit for everything, including energy analysis. So they've really improved the built-in functionality of the energy analysis, which utilizes Green Building Studio, by the way, which is something that you have access to in the cloud. And you can do your analysis in the cloud without having to tie up your local machine to do it. So basically, you know, they're letting us know that there's no longer any need to export to GBXML, so that you can do that outside. And basically, you know, there's a lot of improvements to the software itself. This is not something I'm going to be able to show you today, but it's definitely something I want to make you aware of it, so you can read up on it. And maybe this is the version where you finally decide, okay, let's check it out, let's try this. And on that note, if you are interested in energy analysis, one of the upcoming webinars that Microsoft Resources is going to be doing is specific to the energy analysis for Revit. So I'll show you that date on the Microsoft Resources website before we close out of here, so you can jot that down. Once again, yet another platform tool basically happens to be the A360 collaboration for Revit. You may also heard this called CFR or C4R, and it is basically something that you have to pay for, but it opens up the door for you to use Revit and collaborate with others on the cloud and not have to worry about creating local files and central files the way we normally have been doing, doing our collaboration with Revit in the past. If this is something you're interested in, I highly recommend you, you reach out to us to talk about it. It is fee-based, but it's really exciting for, basically, allowing users to collaborate on the cloud and always knowing you have the latest and greatest models. So, something we can, talk about offline if you are interested. So, finally, specific to MEP. So what you're going to see for the next few slides here are slides about enhancements that are specific, or not specific, but are all about fabrication. So if you're in construction, or if you're one of the contractors, mechanical or electrical contractors, piping contractors that, have reached out to me and talked to me about using Revit for fabrication or creating shop drawings in Revit, you know that in the previous versions of Revit, it wasn't a real easy thing to do. It wasn't something that you could do with Revit out of the box. And you probably heard me mention the fabrication suite that Autodesk purchased from Map Limited over in the UK, which includes fabrication CAD MEP, EST MEP for estimation, and the CAMDuct software that plugs into your duct, fabrication machines and so forth. The data within the fabrication libraries and the databases now can be basically brought into Revit MEP so much easier than what you could before, without any, jump, hop, and skip from this version, this piece of software to another piece of software. However, if you happen to chime in, or if you got on the phone before 11 o'clock, you may have heard me kind of expressing some dismay with this, because this is a little deceiving. What you're going to see in the next few slides here is kind of leading you to believe that this fabrication software is in the core product. It is not. So you still have to have the fabrication software and the database and the libraries of content, such as elbows and ductwork and so forth, that you can then bring into Revit. Autodesk does make a sample available to you, and I'm going to try to show you that here in a second so you can see what it looks like once it is brought in. But just because they're saying, hey, this is an enhancement in Revit, you've got a fabrication tool, does not mean that you automatically have the fabrication content. So sorry to bust your bubble, but that is what I am seeing. So again, these slides that you're seeing here is regarding, basically the fabrication content and the ability to be able to change the content and edit the catalogs and so forth. And it really comes back to, what you've loaded in via the fabrication software, which includes hangers. This has long been, kind of something that's been missing in Revit MEP. Actually, the hangers, some hangers could be brought in from other content libraries, but, for the most part, it's never really been there. When you load it in as part of the fabrication software, you do now have the ability to place hangers and have them sized automatically, and even do linking to your linked models and so forth. Again, this is MEP fabrication. The electrical components support now is built in, so you can see, more information with cable trays, wireways, and they now finally have bus elements, which they did not have in previous versions of Revit. Continuing on the cross-product workflows, you'll see the little snapshot here of the icon, the add-in, the Revit extension for Autodesk Fabrication. Again, it does allow you to be able to utilize these two different pieces of software together, but it doesn't just give it to you out of the box. Now, something that is specific to Revit itself is the ability now to set your options for the for mechanical, or basically for your mechanical systems. You can now control. You can set it to volume only, as well as toggling between none and performance calculations mode. So a lot of people don't even realize that when they're placing duct or placing pipe and they're creating systems as they should, they are basically, there's options here to be able to turn off the calculations in the background, so that Revit isn't always, trying to calculate every time it refreshes a view. So the ability to focus on volume only has been added. They've also added the pipe flow units, or I should say the liters per minute to the pipe flow units. That wasn't there before. They've also improved the snapping behavior, which is inside of your snaps options. I'll show you that now. It basically allows you to turn off the ability to snap to remote objects, so it won't find linked files and kind of waste your time. So that is the end of the slides. Let me get back over to Revit, and let me quickly take a quick look here and make sure that as far as time is concerned, we're getting down to the wire. As I said, one thing that I wanted to show you in the options has to do with the allow navigation during redraw. So when you if you turn this off, again, it's turned on by default, but if you turn this off, you're basically back to the way you were. You have to wait for the view to refresh before you can start navigating. And this little blurb here about reopening models is required. Basically, whatever change you make here, you'd have to open and close the model and for it to apply. So that's one nice little feature there. The open sheet view, let me go ahead and click on, you see which view we have here. If I find one that is actually open, of course I don't have, do this. The browser has been set up, so let me go ahead and show you all the views here real quick. And if I click, I had a view that I was looking at earlier. Here we go. It's not showing me. Let's go back to Sheets. I'm just going to cheat a little bit here, so maybe I should focus on some electrical just to make it easier. So as you can see here in the list inside the project browser under Sheets, there is a E301 North Level lighting plan, and on that lighting plan sheet exists the North Level lighting plan. So if I come up here and I look at North Level lighting plan, right click on that, there is the option not grayed out. And that's what I was trying to find. So a view, if I click on Open Sheet, then what it's going to do is it's going to automatically open the sheet that view is on without you having to come down here and do what I just did by finding the sheet and try to tie things up or tie things together that way. But again, it's only going to work on floor plans. It's not going to work necessarily on legends or panel schedules. So that is not something that you can use for everything, but basically it is a nice little enhancement. The view or the tool I was talking about to be able to alleviate having to create an object oriented by another object, basically is this little button right here on the view panel. So it's going to allow you to create a 3D view of that object that you've selected. And it basically isolates it for you. So, you know, it creates this view very quickly of the object that you've selected, and there's no messing around with, you know, the 3D view cube, or, you know, having to create, you know, a section cut or a partial plan ahead of time. So, again, that is a really nice feature. And then once that view is created, now you have the ability to 3D orbit, and you know, you don't have to worry about the entire model being clunky and difficult to manage. So let me come back over to my little cheat sheet here. We're going to go ahead and look at the settings inside of the properties. So if I go ahead and select the duct and I click on the edit type, click on the routing preference. That's not what I want. I actually want to look at the system properties. Go ahead and bring up a duct system. So if I go ahead and open up the type properties of a duct system, you'll see that we have the mechanical calculations, which is set to all. Now we have the new, you know, we have the ability to look at volume only or flow only, depending on what it is. If I set this to none and then come back into this with this apply, come back into this, you would be able to basically isolate or turn the, you know, turn the calculations on. Let me do a pipe system. Let's see what we got here. Oops, that's not right. Come on. Calculations. So we're not seeing the volume only, but the volume as well as flow is in fact an option. Let me go ahead into the to the systems, or we'll go back to the manage and look at the snaps. The snaps themselves, the option I wanted to show you here in the snaps is the snap to remote objects. That is new for 2016. So if you turn that off, then you're not going to, you know, snap to objects that are in the background, you know, the way you would if you had a linked file. So depending on how, you know, zooming in and out of a view and being able to, you know, snap to something, you know, right there in that view versus something that's linked, you know, that can be problematic at times. So now they have this ability to snap to remote objects. You may want to turn that off if you're having those kinds of difficulties. Let me go back over here and then look at project units, and I'll go ahead and look at the flow. There we go. I was looking at the right thing anyway. So now we have the ability to choose leaders, and basically there's been some formatting changes here that were not here before. So, you know, the project units have been expanded, and there are, I mean, again, I'm running out of time very quickly. There's actually a number of other enhancements that aren't even really documented. One that I found recently has to do with electrical. Under the MEP settings is, if I go into the electrical settings and click on the general, one thing that has been added is being able to create the circuit sequence, you know, being able to specify the circuit sequence when you're, you know, you're generating panels and so forth. You may want to choose, you know, normally it's numerical, but now you can also do group by phase or odd then even. And I was also noticing that the capitalization for load names, I'm not sure if that was a 2016 specific functionality, but it might have been something that was added in one of the 2015 R2 enhancements. And by the way, if you were using 2015 and you were trying to keep up with all of the updates that were released for 2015, everything that you may or may not have installed from the subscription website and regarding the updates for 2015 have been rolled into the core product for 2016, so you don't have to worry about having missed something in 2015. And then also for our electrical folks, there was something I was going to show you regarding schedules, panel schedules. So if I go ahead and open up that one's empty. If I go ahead and take a look at a panel schedule here, one of the cool things that they've added now is this move to function. So before, you used to be able to take a circuit and move it up or down or across. Now you can actually be very specific about where you want to move it to. So if I click on a circuit and then I choose move to, I can choose another open circuit and it moves everything related to that. So that was pretty cool as well.